They say the enemy you should fear most is the one who eats from your table, sleeps under your roof, and knows every secret corner of your heart. I learnt this truth the hard way. The woman who destroyed my marriage wasn't a stranger in a red dress at a nightclub. She wasn't a colleague my husband met at work, no. It was the woman I called sister. The woman I trusted with my life, my home, and my children. My name is Benita, and this is my story. And if you think you know how betrayal tastes, wait until you hear how it was served to me.
With a smile, a hug, and the words, "I'm only here to help."
And to understand how everything fell apart, you need to know how perfect things once were. Before we continue, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and like this video. Lillian and I, we weren't just friends. We were sisters forged not by blood, but by every moment that mattered. From the day we sat beside each other in preschool, sharing crayons and mango slices, to the day we threw our graduation caps in the air at university, we were inseparable. She knew the boy I kissed behind the library in secondary school. And I knew about the teacher she had a crush on in JSS 2. We finished each other's sentences, and we dreamed the same dreams. Our mothers used to joke that we were twins separated at birth and placed in different homes by mistake. We laughed at this.
We wore matching Ankara styles to parties. When one of us was sad, the other felt it like a toothache. When one of us succeeded, we both celebrated. But here's something I've learned: the person who knows all your joys also knows exactly where to plant the knife. We were inseparable until David came. I met David at a friend's birthday party, you know the kind, where the jollof rice is perfect, the DJ actually knows what he's doing, and the night feels like it might hold something magical. David was standing by the drinks table, laughing at something his friend said, and when he turned and our eyes met, I swear the music got quieter. He wasn't the tallest man in the room. He wasn't the loudest. But there was something about the way he looked at me, like I was the only person at that party, the only person in Lagos, the only person in the world. We talked until 3 a.m. About everything and nothing. About our families, our dreams, the kind of life we wanted to build. He told me he wanted a home filled with laughter and children's voices. I told him I wanted a partner, not just a husband, someone who would see me, truly see me. Then let me see you, Benita, he said, his voice soft and certain. Every day. For the rest of my life. 6 months of courtship felt like 6 days. We got married immediately after graduation, a beautiful ceremony with Lillian right there beside me as my chief bridesmaid, helping me adjust my veil, telling me I was the most beautiful bride she'd ever seen. You found a good man, she whispered as she hugged me before I walked down the aisle. Hold him tight. Never let him go. I remember thinking how lucky I was. A husband who adored me. A best friend who celebrated my happiness as if it were her own. I had no idea those words were a prophecy. Or rather a threat. In the early days of our marriage, Lillian visited often. Every weekend, sometimes during the week. David didn't mind. She's your sister, he'd say with that easy smile of his. Our home is her home. She'd bring food, her famous egusi soup that David loved, chin-chin she'd made herself, bottles of Chapman. She'd sit with us, and we'd talk and laugh while watching movies, like we were still in university, like nothing had changed except the ring on my finger. But something had changed, hadn't it? I just didn't see it yet. Looking back now, with eyes that have been opened by pain, I see the signs I missed. The way her gaze would linger on David a second too long. The way she'd touch his arm when she laughed at his jokes, light touches, innocent touches, the kind you wouldn't question from a sister. The way she'd ask about him when she called me. How's David? Is he eating well? Is work stressing him? Always concerned. Always caring. I thought it was love for me, extended to my husband. I didn't know it was hunger. When I got pregnant with our first child, I was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Exhaustion, emotions that swung from joy to tears in seconds. David tried his best, but he was working long hours at the bank, trying to prove himself, trying to build a future for our growing family. That's when Lillian said, "Let me come and stay with you. You need help. You can't do this alone." She arrived with 2 suitcases and a smile that could light up darkness. For those weeks, she was everything I needed. She cooked meals that I could actually keep down. She cleaned the house, she rubbed my swollen feet while we watched movies. She held my hair when I vomited. When I went into labor, she was there. When I held my son, for the first time, she cried happy tears beside me. "He looks like both of you," she said, touching his tiny hand. "He has David's eyes and your nose. He's perfect, Benita. You've made something perfect." She stayed for 2 weeks after the birth. Changing diapers, preparing hot soup for me, teaching me how to get baby to latch properly when breastfeeding became painful and frustrating. "What would I do without you?" I asked her one evening, exhausted and grateful. She smiled, that smile I'd known since childhood. "You'll never have to find out, sister. I'll always be here for you." But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that she was there for David too. While I slept those long, heavy sleeps of new motherhood, drugged by exhaustion and hormones, Lillian was downstairs. Serving David dinner. Asking about his day. Laughing at his stories from work. Sitting just a little too close on the sofa. She was busy planting seeds. Seeds of familiarity. Seeds of dependence. Seeds that would later bloom into something that would choke my marriage like weeds in a garden. 2 years later, when I got pregnant for my second baby. This pregnancy was harder than the first. The exhaustion was worse. My body ached constantly. I could barely keep my eyes open past 7 p.m. And Lillian, my dear sister friend, offered again. "Let me come and help. You need me, and I need to be there for you." David was hesitant this time. I noticed it, the way he paused before saying yes, the way his jaw tightened slightly. But when I looked at him with pleading eyes, carrying his second child, he couldn't say no. Lillian arrived with the same smile. But something was different this time, though I couldn't name it. I slept. God, how I slept. 12, 14 hours at a time. My body was growing a human, and it demanded rest like a tyrant demands tribute. And while I slept, the real work was happening. Lillian would wake before David, prepare his breakfast exactly how he liked it, 2 eggs, toast, coffee with 1 sugar. She'd have his work clothes ironed and laid out. She'd pack his lunch with care, adding little notes that said things like "Have a great day" with smiley faces. When he came home, she'd already have the house spotless, dinner cooking, the kind of warm domestic scene that makes a man feel like a king. And then she would run his baths. "You work so hard, David," she'd say. "Let me take care of you. Benita is sleeping, and you deserve to be taken care of." From baths to massages. "Your shoulders are so tense," she'd say, her hands on him, working out knots, breaking down boundaries. I didn't know. I was upstairs, 8 months pregnant, sleeping the sleep of the exhausted, dreaming innocent dreams while my marriage was being stolen from beneath my nose. 3 weeks she stayed. 21 days for her to transform from sister to seductress, from friend to snake. When Lillian left, I felt relieved. Not because I didn't love her, I did. But because I was ready to have my home back, my husband to myself, my life to return to normal. Except normal never came. David changed. It was subtle at first, the kind of change you notice but dismiss, the way you dismiss a small crack in a wall without realizing the whole structure is shifting. He became distant. Where he used to kiss me goodbye in the mornings, now he'd just nod his head while scrolling through his phone. "Are you okay?" I'd ask, my hand on his arm. "I'm fine, baby. Just work stress. You know how it is." But I didn't know. Because it wasn't work stress. It was something else, something that had invaded our marriage like a virus, invisible but deadly. I tried everything. I cooked his favorite meals. I wore the nightgowns he loved. I asked about his projects at work, listened when he talked, laughed at his jokes. But it was like trying to hold water in my hands, the more I grasped, the more slipped away. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I'd hear him on his phone. Texting. The soft blue light illuminating his face. The small smile that he no longer gave to me. Who was he talking to? What was taking him away from me? I was 8 months pregnant, swollen and scared, feeling my husband slip away and not understanding why. Then came the phone call. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was in bed, my boy sleeping beside me, my pregnant belly making it impossible to find a comfortable position. David was in the living room, working late on his laptop, or so he said. My phone rang. It was Lillian. She sobbed, her voice broken and desperate. "Benita, please. I need help." I sat up, my heart racing. "Lily? What's wrong? What happened?" "My landlord, he threw me out. He said he doesn't want single tenants anymore. He locked me out. I'm on the street. I have nowhere to go. Please, Benny, please, I don't know what to do." She was crying so hard she could barely speak. My best friend. My sister. Homeless. Scared. Alone in Lagos at night, a city that doesn't forgive vulnerable women. "Come here," I said immediately. "Come to my house. You can stay with us until you sort things out." "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "You're never a burden. Come now. I'll tell David." I hung up and waddled to the living room, my hands supporting my heavy belly. David looked up from his laptop, his expression unreadable. "Lillian needs help," I said. "She's been thrown out of her house. She has nowhere to go. Can she stay with us? Just for a little while?" I watched something flash across his face. Panic? Fear? But it was gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. "Baby, I don't think that's a good idea. We have a lot going on. The baby's coming soon. We need our space. She's my best friend, David. She's like my sister. We can't leave her on the street." We argued. Back and forth. His resistance was strong, strange, out of character for the generous man I'd married. But I pushed. I pleaded. I used my pregnancy, my emotions, my tears. Finally, he gave in. "Fine. But just until she finds another place. A few weeks, maximum." "Thank you, baby. Thank you." I hugged him, relieved and grateful. I thought I'd saved my friend. I had no idea I'd just unlocked the door and invited in the destroyer of my world. Lillian arrived within an hour, her eyes red from crying, her suitcases in hand. I hugged her at the door, held her while she wept, promised her everything would be okay. Over her shoulder, I saw David standing in the hallway, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. I should have wondered why he looked like he'd seen a ghost. I should have asked why his expression held dread instead of compassion. But I didn't. Because I trusted them both. And that trust was what cost me everything. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. When someone you love with all your heart, someone you've known your entire life, someone who knows your every weakness and fear, when that person decides to destroy you, how do you survive it? There's an old Igbo proverb that says, "The person who deceives you is the one you trusted." When Lillian moved into my home that night, dragging her suitcases across the threshold with tears still wet on her cheeks, I thought I was being a good friend. A good sister. I thought I was doing what God would want me to do, sheltering the homeless, protecting the vulnerable. I didn't know I was bringing a python into my bedroom. And pythons don't strike immediately. They coil slowly, patiently, tightening their grip until you can't breathe, until you can't scream, until it's too late to escape. For the next few weeks, that python wrapped itself around everything I loved. And I, blind, trusting, pregnant, and exhausted, I helped it tighten the coils. Lillian settled into the guest room. She'd emerge in the mornings with quiet apologies. "I'm so sorry for intruding," she'd say, touching my arm with that familiar gentleness. But gentle things can still be deadly. I was 8 months pregnant, my body a battleground of aches and exhaustion. Sleep and tiredness. Some days I'd wake at 2 p.m., disoriented, my mouth dry, finding food covered and waiting for me on the nightstand. "Lily made lunch for you," David would say when I asked. Just those words. Nothing more. His tone flat, his eyes avoiding mine. I should have heard the alarm in that flatness. Should have seen the guilt swimming beneath the surface of his avoidance. By the second week, something changed in the air of my home. It was like walking into a room where people had just stopped talking about you. That thick, guilty silence that speaks louder than words ever could. David and Lillian would be in the kitchen together, and when I'd waddle in, the conversation would snap shut like a trap. "What were you talking about?" I'd ask, smiling, innocent. "Nothing important," Lillian would say quickly. Too quickly. "Just asking David if he wanted more tea." But their body language told a different story. The way they stood just slightly too close. The way they'd jump apart when they heard my footsteps. The way David's ears would turn red, that tell he'd had since I'd known him, the one that appeared when he was lying. Still, I pushed the thoughts away. I'm being paranoid. It's just pregnancy hormones. Then David started finding faults. Little things at first. "Benita, why is the house so dusty?" he'd say, his voice sharp with irritation I'd never heard before. "Can't you at least keep things clean?" I'd stare at him, confused, hurt. I was almost due for delivery. Moving was difficult. Breathing was difficult. And besides, but Lily's been cleaning. Maybe Lily shouldn't have to do everything, he snapped. She's our guest, not our maid. Our guest. When did she become just a guest in this house? When did helping become a burden? When did my husband start speaking to me like I was a stranger he resented? The criticisms multiplied like bacteria. My cooking was too salty. I was spending too much money. I was sleeping too much. I was always tired. I never looked nice anymore. But here's what baffles me. Whenever David criticized me, Lillian would defend me. "David, that's not fair," she'd say, her voice gentle but firm. "Benny is pregnant. She's doing her best. You should be more understanding." She'd turn to me, take my hand, squeeze it with warmth. "Don't mind him. Men don't understand what pregnancy does to a woman. He doesn't mean it. I'd feel grateful. Relieved. See? She's still my sister. She's still on my side. So it seemed. I didn't know that the moment I left the room, the moment I climbed the stairs to sleep off another wave of exhaustion, she'd turn to David with a different face. I know it's hard, David, she'd whisper. She's not the woman you married anymore, is she? I see how patient you're being. Lillian was playing a game I didn't even know existed. In my presence, she was the devoted friend. She'd make me ginger tea for nausea. She'd rub my feet when they swelled. She'd tell me stories to make me laugh, remind me of our childhood adventures, the time we snuck out to a party, the time we failed our mathematics exam together, the time we swore we'd be friends forever. Forever, Benny, she'd say, looking into my eyes with such sincerity. No matter what, we're sisters. But behind closed doors, in whispered conversations I couldn't hear, she was weaving a different narrative. She was painting me as ungrateful, as changed, as difficult. She was highlighting every flaw, magnifying every shortcoming, making David see me through a lens of disappointment. And David, my David, the man who'd promised to love me forever, he was starting to believe her. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. David and Lillian had developed their own rhythm, their own private language of glances and half-smiles. They'd be laughing together in the living room, and when I'd enter, the laughter would drain away like water through a sieve. What's funny? I'd ask, trying to join in, trying to be part of whatever they were sharing. You had to be there, David would say, his voice dismissive. But I am here, I wanted to scream. This is my house. He is my husband. She is my friend. Why do I feel like the outsider? Late at night, I'd hear them talking. Voices low. I'd strain to hear, but could only catch fragments. My name. Laughter. Long silences that felt intimate. I was being erased from my own life, one whisper at a time. Then I went into labor. My baby boy came screaming into the world at 3 a.m. on a rainy Thursday. The pain was worse than with my first baby, sharper, longer, more brutal. I squeezed David's hand so hard I thought I'd break his fingers, and for those hours in the delivery room, he was mine again. You're so strong, Benita, he whispered, wiping sweat from my forehead. You're amazing. I love you. For a moment, I believed everything would be okay. Birth has a way of resetting things, of reminding you what matters. But that moment lasted exactly as long as we were alone in the hospital. When we came home 3 days later, me weak and stitched and bleeding, my tiny and perfect bundle of joy in my arms, Lillian was waiting. And the woman who greeted us wasn't the friend who'd helped with my first baby. This woman wore a mask of cold calculation. The help stopped. Completely. Abruptly. Like a tap turned off mid-flow. Lily, could you please hold baby while I shower? I'd ask, my body aching, my stitches pulling, my breasts engorged and painful. Sorry. I'm busy, Benita, she'd say without looking up from her phone. Can't you see I'm doing something? Busy. Doing what? Sitting on my sofa? Eating food from my kitchen? Living rent-free in the home I'd opened to her? When Ivan, my first baby, would cry, she'd ignore him. When I'd struggle to carry both boys, she'd walk past as if I were invisible. When I'd need an extra pair of hands to change a diaper, to prepare a bottle, to just exist in the chaos of newborn life, she'd suddenly have somewhere to be. Where are you going? I'd ask, desperation creeping into my voice. Out, she'd say simply. And the door would close behind her. "You look terrible, Ada," she said one day, wrinkling her nose as I emerged from the bedroom, unwashed, exhausted, my shirt stained with breast milk and baby spit up. "Don't you care about yourself anymore?" No wonder David looks so stressed. Some other days with different talks. "This house is a mess." "What do you do all day?" "I mean, yes, you have a baby, but still. Are you the only one having a baby? Other women manage." Or, worst of all, David deserves better than this. A man works hard all day, he should come home to peace, not chaos. To a woman who's put herself together, not this. She'd gesture at me like I was garbage. Like I was nothing. Each word was a slap. But what hurt more was that David heard these things. He heard her disrespect his wife, the mother of his children. And he said nothing. I started to break. The exhaustion, the pain, the hormones, the isolation, they formed a perfect storm inside me. I'd cry while breastfeeding my baby, my tears falling onto his perfect, innocent head. I'd stand in the shower and wonder what I'd done wrong, how I'd gone from beloved wife to burden in just a few weeks. My sweet 2-year-old would climb onto my lap and wipe my tears with his small hands. "Mama sad?" he'd ask, his eyes worried. "No, baby," I'd lie. "Mama's okay." But I wasn't okay. I was drowning, and the two people who should have thrown me a rope were the ones holding my head under water. David barely touched me anymore. He'd come home late, eat dinner in silence, and disappear into his phone. When I'd try to talk to him, he'd sigh like I was an inconvenience. And Lillian? She'd watch it all with satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. It exploded on a Sunday afternoon. My baby was just 6 weeks old. I'd barely slept in days. I was moving through life like a zombie, feeding, changing, soothing, surviving. The house was cluttered but not dirty. I was doing my best. Lillian walked through the living room, looked around with exaggerated disgust, and said, "Benita, I'm starting to understand why David is so unhappy. What man wants to live in a pigsty with a wife who's let herself go completely? You used to have pride. Now look at you." Something in me snapped. 6 weeks of disrespect. 6 weeks of watching her take over my home. 6 weeks of being treated like I was the guest in my own life. It all came roaring out. "Get out!" I screamed. "Get out of my house! You ungrateful bitch, how dare you!" The argument was loud, ugly, and raw. Lillian left the house. Dramatic. Tearful. Playing the victim perfectly. An hour later, David came home early from work. His face was storm clouds and thunder. He didn't greet me. Didn't ask about the boys. Just stood in the doorway of our bedroom, his hands in his pockets, his jaw tight. "We need to talk," he said. Those 4 words. They're never good, are they? They're the predecessor to devastation. I sat on the bed, baby asleep in my arms, and waited. "I can't do this anymore," David said, his voice cold, final. "I can't be married to you. You're not the woman I fell in love with. You're not the kind of woman I want to spend my life with." The world stopped spinning. "What? David, what are you saying?" "I'm saying it's over. This marriage is over. Our baby is just 6 weeks old," I whispered, my voice breaking. 6 weeks, David. What are you talking about? I've made up my mind. I want you to leave. Leave? This is my home. These are our children. Take the children. Take whatever you need. But I want you out by the end of the week. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My husband, the man who'd promised forever, who'd held my hand through 2 births, who'd vowed before God and family to love me in sickness and health, was throwing me away like trash. Is this because of the fight with Lillian? David, she's been disrespecting me for weeks. This has nothing to do with Lillian, he said, but his eyes shifted. That tell again. That lie. This has everything to do with her, doesn't it? The truth was crashing over me in waves. She's been poisoning you against me. Don't be ridiculous, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. How long? I asked, my voice shaking. How long have you been sleeping with her? The silence was my answer. Oh God, I breathed. Oh my God. My best friend. In my house. While I was pregnant with your child. You need to leave, Benita. He couldn't even deny it. Couldn't even pretend anymore. I packed through tears that wouldn't stop. 2 babies, 2 suitcases, 1 shattered life. My boy kept asking, "Where we going, Mama?" and I had no answer. My little baby cried, sensing my distress, feeding off my devastation. David didn't help me pack. Didn't help me carry the bags. Didn't offer money or support or even an apology. He just stood there, this stranger wearing my husband's face, waiting for me to disappear. I left my home on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks postpartum, with 2 babies and nowhere to go. I moved in with my mother. She held me while I wept, asked no questions, just whispered prayers over my head in Igbo. My father called David, tried to intervene, but David wouldn't answer. Wouldn't explain. Just said the marriage was over and hung up. For 2 months, I existed in a fog of pain. I functioned, feeding babies, changing diapers, going through the motions of survival, but I wasn't alive. I was a ghost haunting my own life. Then my cousin called. Her voice was hesitant, careful. Benita, how are you and the kids doing? I don't know if I should tell you this. Just tell me, I said, numb to everything. David and Lillian got married yesterday. It was a small ceremony. I saw the pictures on Facebook. The phone slipped from my hands. Married. They'd gotten married. The affair wasn't just physical. It was planned. Calculated and intentional. 2 months. He'd waited 2 months after throwing me out to marry my best friend. Which meant he'd probably been planning it even while I was living there. Even while I was pregnant. Even while I was bleeding and crying and begging him to remember the love we'd shared. I cried for 3 days straight. The kind of crying that makes you sick, that empties you out until there's nothing left but a hollow shell. My mother was worried I'd stopped eating. My father wanted to confront David. My siblings called, offering support I couldn't accept. Because how do you accept support for a wound this deep? How do you heal from a betrayal this complete? The woman I'd called sister since childhood had stolen my husband. And my husband, the man who'd vowed forever, had let himself be stolen. I'd lost everything. My marriage. My friend. My home. My trust in love itself. The weeks crawled by like wounded animals. I'd scroll through Facebook late at night, torturing myself with pictures of their life. David and Lillian at restaurants I'd always wanted to try. Lillian wearing clothes I recognized, had she taken them from my closet? David smiling wider than he'd smiled with me in months. They looked happy. Blissfully, perfectly happy. And I looked like death. Dark circles under my eyes. Weight dropping off me despite nursing my baby. My hair, once my pride, now thin and lifeless from stress. You need to move on, Benita, my mother would say gently. You need to accept that this chapter is closed. But how do you move on when your heart is still trapped in the ruins? When you wake up every morning expecting to roll over and find your husband beside you, only to remember he's sleeping beside someone else? Beside her. Then, 5 months after their wedding, my phone rang. It was my cousin again. The one who'd told me about the marriage. This time, her voice was different. Excited. Gleeful, even. Benny, you won't believe this. David and Lillian's marriage is over. They've separated. People are saying it ended badly, shouting matches, thrown objects, the whole dramatic scene. She moved out last week. I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt satisfaction. Should have thought, good. Let them taste the poison they served me. But instead, I felt nothing. Empty. The news washed over me like water over stone, leaving no mark. Benny? Did you hear me? They're done. It's over. I heard you, I said quietly. Thank you for telling me. I hung up and stared at the wall. What was built on betrayal had crumbled under the weight of its own deceit. There was poetry in that, I supposed. 2 weeks later, David showed up at my mother's house. I was in the backyard, hanging baby clothes on the line, Smart, my second baby strapped to my back in a wrapper, Ivan playing in the dirt at my feet. I looked up and there he was, standing by the gate, looking uncertain and small. He'd lost weight. His clothes hung on him. His eyes had dark circles that mirrored mine. Benita, he said, his voice cracking. Can we talk? Every fiber of my being wanted to scream at him. To throw things. To demand answers for the months of pain, the betrayal, the abandonment. To ask him how he could stand at my mother's gate after what he'd done. But I was tired. So tired. The boys are here, I said. Not in front of them. He nodded, grateful for even that small mercy. He didn't deserve it, but I gave it anyway. We sat under the mango tree in my mother's compound. The same kind of tree where Lillian and I used to sit as children, sharing secrets and dreams. The irony wasn't lost on me. I made a mistake, David began, his hands clasped together like he was praying. The biggest mistake of my life. I was foolish, Benita. I was blind. I let Lillian manipulate me. She wasn't who I thought she was. Stop, I said quietly. Don't blame her for what you chose. Yes, she manipulated. Yes, she lied. But you're a grown man, David. You made choices. You threw away our family. You married her 2 months after throwing me out. Those were your choices. He was crying now. Actual tears sliding down his face. I know. I know. And I'm sorry. God, baby, I'm so sorry. Please. Please forgive me. Please take me back. And there it was. The question that would determine everything. Could I forgive the man who destroyed me? Could I trust the hands that had pushed me into darkness? Could I rebuild a marriage on the ashes of betrayal? More importantly, should I? My mother said no. My father said no. My siblings, my cousins, my friends, they all said no. He threw you away. He chose her over you and the kids. Let him live with that choice. But here's what they didn't understand. Here's what nobody who hasn't lived through this kind of betrayal can understand. Love doesn't die just because it should. I looked at David, broken, repentant, begging. I thought about my boys, growing up without their father. I thought about the man I'd fallen in love with at that party, the one who'd promised me forever. I thought about the vows we'd made before God. And I thought about Lillian, wherever she was, probably thinking she'd won by destroying what we had. Was giving her that satisfaction worth my pride? Or was fighting for my marriage worth swallowing that pride?